We're recording. Are we live? Good. Okay, let's get into this then. So, top prep tips 101. Given that we are officially heading into prep season, I wanted to drop some of the best tips that has helped me on the countless preparations that I've done since 2014, 13, and the thousands of our clients that have had incredible success through this phase of your journey, which is getting you into peak physical condition. So, I wanted to break this down into 4 key areas, which are as follows. We have training, nutrition, expenditure, and environment, all of which I have plenty of top tips for you that are going to help you in those areas. So starting out, let's talk about training. Now, naturally, the deeper prep goes, the harder it gets. You have less energy as you are expending more and eating less, and that starts to take its toll, especially on your training. So here's what you need to do. First and foremost, you need to train when energy is at its highest. Now, I know that this isn't always easy, especially if you only have certain times during the day that you can fit your training in. However, if you do have the luxury, please use that to your advantage. But if you are incredibly busy and you only have certain allocated slots throughout the day, then you simply have to suck it up. You know what your mission is, and you know what you need to do, so you've just got to do it within those time slots that make sense. When you have a busy job, when you have kids, you've just got to do it when you've got to do it and when makes the most sense for you. But if you have the luxury, train when energy is at its highest. For me, that's typically around 1 or 2 o'clock. First thing in the morning is not great, but sometimes it has to be done. Last thing at night is my worst case scenario for a number of different reasons. No more so that I'm not going to drop a whole load of caffeine, which I typically want before I train. I ain't going to do that anytime after 6 o'clock. Otherwise, I'm going to be staring at the ceiling, not being able to sleep, because that caffeine stays in your system for so long. But that's a conversation for another day. So train ideally when energy is at its highest. Okay, next on the list, utilize caffeine. Now, this may seem obvious, however, caffeine is one of the most widely used substances in the world. Use it to your advantage, especially for training purposes. Now, this may mean cutting back on caffeine consumption during other times of the day, as using it too frequently will lessen the effects. Now, you would be some kind of alien if you're not really drinking coffee or having any type of caffeine. I don't know how you even live or how you function. For me, caffeine is the lifeblood that gives me that drive and that focus to do the things. Now, I hate the idea that it is some kind of crutch, but ultimately, it is available to us, and it can massively have a profound impact on your performance, your cognitive performance, your energy, and your output. Now, when it comes to your preparation with training, as the energy starts to dip, we certainly want to use caffeine to our advantage. So if you are drinking a lot of coffee throughout the day, if you're having energy drinks or anything and you're using them through the day, try to use them sparingly. You want to be cautious of the timing of your caffeine drop. Now, ideally, you want caffeine 30 to 40 minutes before you train. So as you walk through those gym doors, the caffeine hits, energy spikes, you get that tunnel vision focus, and you can do what you know you need to do in the gym. It kicks in and it kind of creates this sense of urgency and drive and determination to do what you need to do. But if you have been having too much caffeine before taking that, then you're not going to get that same level of impact. As with anything, danger is in the dosage, and if we're having too much, the body gets used to it, and anything that it gets used to, you need to have more and more till you get to that point of, a diminishing return of investment that you put it in and it doesn't really have any impact whatsoever. So be cautious, be sparing, and try and utilize the timings with your caffeine to push your training, because let's be honest, we need to make sure that we have the focus, drive, and determination to train hard whilst we're on this preparation, whilst we're in that deficit. The body is going to fight you, and the only reason you're going to give your body the reason to keep the muscle that it has is to train with intensity, to really push that performance. Because if you don't give it a reason to, if you're not lifting with the same level of strength, if you're not lifting that same amount of volume, then you're almost signaling to the body that, we don't need this muscle. If you can quite comfortably deal with what you are doing with your training, then it's going to utilize the muscle to its advantage, and you're gonna get some muscle wastage. So caffeine is a big one for me, especially when it comes to that training performance. Okay, next on the list for training whilst you are on your preparation, wear headphones. I mean, You would be crazy if you are going into the gym and raw dogging it, not wearing headphones, just being at one with the sound of your own breath sounding like Darth Vader when you are panting, grunting and groaning on the sets. But for me, that almost signifies that you're going into your world. You know, you are entering into that headspace that it is time to go. I'm entering into war mode, the headphones are in, I'm listening to something that speaks to my soul, and I won't share the full extent of my playlists, as you may find some curveballs in there. You may find a little Westlife. You may find some strange songs that you kind of like, how do you even train to this? This is not motivating. But you know, whatever you need to hit on some level of emotion, whether it is something that means something to you or whether it's something that, you know, makes you feel raw and aggressive so you can get in there, attack the waves, some screaming stuff. I have all kinds of different playlists depending on the mood that I'm in. But I use whatever I can to get me in the headspace to do the thing, to attack the waves, to attack myself. And, you know, for me, the gym has always been that place where I can go to war with myself. I can get into that headspace, I can attack my demons, and I can push myself, which for me is what I've always considered iron therapy. There's no therapy like iron therapy, and music is such a profound way to get into that headspace to do the thing. So definitely use headphones. And not only using headphones whilst you are training, but wearing headphones before you even get to the gym. Now, I could, you know, be ratting on myself here, but I would often wear headphones even when I was in the car on the way to the gym, which I know is relatively illegal. But even though I could play music in the car, sometimes there's just something to be said to blocking out and drowning out the noise and being in your own world, being in your own headspace, getting into that mindset. And the way that I look at this is, you know, before a big game, before a footballer, before a basketball player, anybody who plays in any level of professional sport, a lot of players will listen to music before the big game. And that's just to get themselves into the right mindset to attack their mission. Now, I want you to see yourself as an athlete, and I want you to see your training session as your big game. That is your big game. And you want to make sure that you're in the right mindset. You're not distracted. You know, there's so much going on in your life. There's so much noise. There's so many things coming at you. And it can be difficult to compartmentalize, and when you're in the gym, be present, be in the gym, be focused on what you need to do right there, right then, and leave everything behind. And I think that, you know, if you're just alone with your own thoughts, music is a great distraction tool. So get into the mindset before you even step into the church, being the gym, and make sure that you're ready to attack and you're not being distracted or swayed by external factors and noise. Now, this next one kind of leans into what we spoke about with caffeine, but take a tactical pre-workout, especially on preparation. I think a tactical pre-workout can work wonders. I don't think you want to get into the realm of having to use them all of the time, but there are certainly times where you need that extra bit of something. You know, caffeine is one thing, it's going to raise the heart rate, it's going to kind of get you into that place that you need to be, but a pre-workout is going to contain a whole other bunch of pumping agents, stimulants, things like beta-alanine that's going to give you that tingling sensation, which I know some people absolutely hate, but I kind of like it. Even if I feel like I'm going to scratch my damn eyeballs out, it's just for me, once I get that tingle, it like signifies it's time to fucking train. Like, there's no world that exists where you're going to take a couple scoops of pre-workout, you know, be tingling all over and all the sensors are telling you it's time to go ahead and train, and then you don't train. You've almost signed that declaration. Once the scoop of pre went in, you now have to train. You have an obligation. I mean, what are you going to do? Just sit there watching Netflix, you know, pondering and procrastinating on your phone whilst your whole being is going, go fucking lift some weights. So, you don't want to do them all the time, but, you know, on the days where you just need to see fucking sounds, take the pre, take the hit, go ahead and crush it. But don't do them all the time, otherwise they'll just have no relevance, no meaning, and they'll have no impact, which is not what we want them for. Okay, moving on to nutrition. Now, when on preparation, naturally at certain points you are going to battle hunger. It is inevitable. Anybody that tells you otherwise, especially if you are gunning for crazy levels of conditioning for, let's say, a physique photo shoot, it's never going to happen unless you are willing to face that hunger, battle it, and win that battle more than you lose it. You know, you can't be in a place where you are constantly succumbing to that hunger cue. Your body is going to fight you every single step of this way. Every bit of your being, every fiber of your being wants you to give in. It doesn't want you to lose weight. It wants to stay in that state of homeostasis. It's the body's natural response. It's a self-preservation mechanism, ultimately. But you need to be able to tell that voice where to go. And this is something that is required of you in order to accomplish the goals that you have. You have to be stronger than that internal battle. You know, that voice telling you to go ahead and just eat the food, to give up. You've got to be stronger than that. If you can't tell that voice where to go, then you're going to struggle. So here are a few recommendations that I have that are going to help you stay the course. Okay, be aware of your hunger cues and common trends. You know, if you know you aren't that hungry in the morning, then push your first meal back until later in the day and fast. You know, just drink a coffee and be on your way. Ultimately, this will somewhat backload your food and allow you to eat more later in the day, which is often when we find ourselves more peckish. But it depends. Everybody is different, so you need to be aware of your own hunger cues. Like for me, I'm not that hungry in the morning. And the only time I would definitely make sure that I'm eating in the morning is if I'm in a build phase. I want to stay in a state of, you know, an anabolic state. Whereas right now, the aim is just to stay within that caloric threshold that I have for myself and not go outside of that quota. So if I can get away with getting up in the morning, drinking a black coffee, going for a walk, getting on with my day, and then once the hunger kicks in, then, you know, then having my first meal, then that works perfectly. And it means that as the day goes by, I've now got more calories to play around with and I've got more meals to consume with the rest of the day. There's no use in kind of force feeding yourself at times where you're not that hungry if you can get away with not. You know, listen to your body. If it doesn't need it, it doesn't need it. And if it means that you're going to have more to play around with in the times where you're probably going to be a little hungrier, let's say more specifically in the back end of the night when you are feeling peckish and you know, you're looking in the cupboards for food when you've already eaten everything you could possibly eat that day. All of your meal, every snack, everything's gone. There's no calories left in the tank and you're still hungry. It's such a bad place to be. You're going to lose that battle eventually. There's only so long you can, you know, keep pushing on, grinding through, brushing your teeth, going to bed and just being pissed off that you're still kind of hungry. So really, just be aware of the timings and try and push the food back if that is the case. That's going to help tremendously. We've all been there. We've all looked in the cupboard. We've all looked in the fridge and somehow have considered that as if by, you know, through osmosis, that we're going to be full by looking at the food, by, you know, watching Beard Meets Food or Man vs. Food, and it's a strange thing that we do. This prep will test you, it will challenge you, it'll take your headspace to crazy places, but if you time your meals appropriately, and you eat at the times where you need to, then you're going to be in a much better place, okay? Now this leads me on to the next one, meal frequency and meal volume. Now here's the choices that we have when it comes to preparation and we're trying to mitigate the hunger. We can go little portions and often, or we can go bigger portions and less frequent. Now, on a personal standpoint, I much prefer to have bigger portions. Now, there has certainly been preps in the past where I would go little and often, you know, let's say 6 to 8 meals throughout the day, and they would be little tiny, you know, relatively tiny portions, but I would drip feed them, and it would always mean that I could pretty much eat consistently through the day. That doesn't work for me anymore. You know, when I eat, it almost sets off the hunger hormone and makes me want to eat more. So I'm far better off now eating a bigger portion that leaves me feeling more satiated and satisfied, and almost, you know, that feeling of being full, not to the degree like, you know, on Christmas Day when you eat way too much and you're absolutely bloated to high hell. That's not going to happen. You're on prep, so no portion's going to be that big. But even a slight feeling of that is better for me than kind of eating a little bit and almost teasing myself and going, this is all you're allowed. And then I struggle then and I'm thinking and waiting and pondering and procrastinating until the next feeding. It's not good. I don't like to be in that place. So I think this is a bit of trial and error in understanding yourself and your body and your hunger cues. And in many ways, this just comes with time, practice, and patience, and various approaches. You got to try it. You know, you don't know until you try it. But self-awareness is key here to combat this in finding the right approach of understanding yourself and understanding what works best for you. Moving on, pad out your meals with greens. This is a key when on preparation, as let's consider that one meal is going to be, 125 grams of chicken. That's your protein source. You don't have any carbohydrates in that meal because you are going to be deep in prep at this stage. I mean, are you just going to eat the 125 grams of chicken breast on its own? I mean, you could. There's nothing wrong with that. You need to get that in. But is that really going to be fulfilling? Are you going to be satiated? The chances are you're not. You're going to eat that and be fucking starving. So for me, greens, leafy greens, vegetables, salads, vegetable stir fries, anything that you can put in that is super high fiber, super low calorie, the more of that you can put in to pad out that meal and create more volume with your meal, the better. Because let's consider 125 grams of chicken on a plate versus 125 grams of chicken on top of a huge bed of green vegetables. Now, you may not be a vegetable lover, but I hate to say it, if you aren't getting those vegetables in, you are going to struggle on these preparations. That's the top and bottom of it. Let's consider our stomach, however big or small that is. If you're only putting in a small amount without the vegetables to kind of, pad it out, you're going to struggle. You want that volume, you want to feel full. And things like the leafy greens are super fibrous, super low calorie. And the positive side of this is, because they are so incredibly fibrous, it somewhat draws water into the digestive tract, which creates that feeling of fullness. It can often, even be a feeling of bloatedness. But especially through pepper, I would take the bloated feeling over feeling starving, and the likelihood of me cracking and caving becomes considerably higher if I'm in a place where I'm fucking starving. You don't want to be in that place, so you have to be working in the greens, ultimately. It's a massive, massive top tip, and it's, for me, in many ways, it's a bit of a non-negotiable if you're going to get through this prep without cracking and caving. Okay, last one on nutrition tips on this preparation. Low-calorie snacks. Okay, now, just from personal note, I don't really work in many low-calorie snacks these days, but going on previous preparations, and I've done many in my time, there were certainly times where breaking the monotony of, the baseline meals, and let's be honest, it's going to be chicken, it's going to be fish, it's going to be mince, it's going to be a lot of vegetables, a lot of salads, all of that stuff. That can start to feel quite tedious and monotonous, and in many ways, it can increase those cravings for sweet treats. You start to want to have those sweet foods, even if you aren't that much of a sweet person. Most people start now all of a sudden looking at a piece of cake and you're dribbling because you're so freaking hungry on this prep, and you are so, your diet is so void of those things. So I think low-calorie snacks to break the monotony sprinkled in throughout are a great way to combat this. Now, this can be things like fruit, things like strawberries, blueberries. They're all super high volume and relatively low in calories, and they can be worked into your diet. Or things like, sub 100 calorie snacks. If you ever look down the aisle, and it's usually where all the crap is, so I would often say if you're going to go do a food shop, don't do it while you're hungry. That's another great tip. But if you go down that aisle where all the kind of the lower calorie snacks are, you're finding things like iced gems, you're finding things like party rings, you're finding things like jammy dodgers, and this is for you guys based in the UK, but like little biscuit treats, you're finding those animal chocolate biscuits. They're typically under 100 calories. Now, most prep coaches, most transformation coaches, typically aren't going to go ahead and say, go eat some animal biscuits, go have some party rings. Because on paper, obviously they're not the best choice. Fruit is always going to, be the ideal choice for the fact that there's so much more that you're getting out of the fruit in terms of nutritional value comparatively to those crappy snacks that are crappy. But let's be honest, the imperfect approach that we can execute 7 days out of 7 beats the perfect approach we can only execute 5 days out of 7, because then we get to the weekend and we're so craving the crap that we end up having way more of the crap than had we just drip fed in some of the crap through the week consistently. So there are so many preps where I would love to have them, and it would be so good, and I'd look forward to the treat, after my chicken and broccoli meal or whatever it might be, or the stir fry that I had, or the salmon. If I get a pack of party rings with a cup of tea, I was so freaking happy. I would savor those bad boys for so freaking long, and they would taste so good. It would feel like such a freaking reward and treat. And it worked. It worked. It got me through those diets. Now, I don't do this much these days. I just don't feel the need to, but it has worked incredibly well in the past, so I would certainly recommend doing that. Now, this is my absolute top hack for a low-calorie snack. And I'm on preparation right now. I'm just starting this preparation, so this may be something that I work in later down the line as calories become more and more sparse as the prep goes on. But sugar-free jelly. Now, you can get the little kind of pots of sugar-free jelly, the Hartley's low sugar. I'm sure that they're no more than 10 calories a pot. I think they're much less than that. But for me, the consistency of those isn't good. It's like it's watery. It doesn't really feel like you're eating much. It's just like you slurp it down and it's gone. That was a horrible word. I don't know why I said slurp. But the powdered form of the heartless sugar-free jelly, and you can even get, let's say, you know, your home brands from the supermarket. The powdered form of those jellies, the sugar-free form, it's next to no calories for a full pack. Now, I would often be greedy. I would have 2 packs, which I'm going to consider no more than 20, 30, 40 calories. I don't know what they are off the top of my head. But you put that into a huge jug. You fill it with boiling water, half cold water, put that in the fridge. And I would do that every single night or every single morning so that when the back end of the evening came around, even if I'd gone through pretty much all of my food for the day and I was finally sitting down to rest my weary legs from hitting my 15 to 20,000 steps in the day and all my workouts and all the work I'd done mentally exhausted, I could sit down, watch a little Netflix and chill, and just slowly graze on my big bowl of jelly. And I would often put less liquid in it so that it made it more solidified. Like you could literally turn the tub upside down and the jelly wouldn't fall out. That's how solid I made it. Because it just felt more substantial, like I was actually eating something rather than just this kind of sloppy mess. So sugar-free jelly for me is an absolute game changer, especially at the back end of prep when things are getting really tight. Okay, moving on to expenditure. So these are some expenditure hacks, tricks or tools that you can use as, let's face it, expenditure is a huge aspect of your preparation. You know, you have targets to meet and it can become a real drag, not to mention incredibly time consuming. So here are some key tips to help ensure that you can hit the mark and, you know, that it doesn't feel like such a chore. This is the biggest one for me. Do it early. You know, if you have expenditure targets, if you have a step count to meet, do it early. I've always said it. Win the morning and you will win the day. Now, so many people will sit here and say, I'm not a morning person. You know, I've never been a morning person. I can't get up in the morning. The point is this. If you want something bad enough, you will find a way. If you don't, you will find an excuse. And if you have looked at your day, you've looked at your schedule, and you've mapped out when and where you're going to be able to hit those expenditure targets, then, you know, if the morning time is the only way you're going to get this done, then it is what it is. And if you want to do it, then you'll fricking do it. And if you don't, then you don't. Like, that, if that's the price to pay, that is the price to pay. So do it early. You know, everything you do takes time, especially cardio and step count. But saying I don't have time is ludicrous. Of course you don't have time. Nobody has time. So you have to make the time. So getting up and out and doing it first thing is the best way to attack it and get ahead. Because if you don't do that, you'll be chasing your tail all day long. And if you're hoping to fly by the seat of your pants and have somehow miraculously got to the end of the day having ticked all the boxes, the chances are it's not going to happen. You're going to fail. You're going to fall short. You know, you're not going to succeed on this endeavor. So do it early. Do it while it's easy is the way that I'll often put it. Okay, next on expenditure. Schedule your expenditure. Schedule it. Like anything else that's important in your life, it needs to go in the diary. You know, that business meeting, that doctor's appointment, you know, your kid's dance recital. Expenditure needs to be held with the same level of credence, like your workout. As I've already said, if you are just flying by the day through the seat of your pants, it's not going to happen. You know, you're not just going to stumble into the gym if you didn't plan for it. You're not just going to miraculously have got to the end of the day, have a look at your Fitbit, and ooh, there was the 15K steps or the 20K. That's not going to happen unless you're a freaking postman or working in an Amazon warehouse or something somewhere. Like, it ain't going to happen. You've got to schedule it and you have to stick to that structure and that routine. You know, there's no use in hoping to find the time. Hope isn't a strategy. You have to make the time. Schedule it, plan it, and stick to it. Next thing on expenditure is make it a productive and reflective time. Now, if you are, you know, just merely walking, which is typically the way that I will get most of our clients to do it, unless you are incredibly time poor, and I have proof of that. You know, you show me your schedule, and it literally, there's no world that exists that you're going to be able to hit the kind of step counts that I'm needing you to. There's other ways around it. But if you are merely walking, there's no reason you can't utilize that time wisely. You know, if you were to check the screen time on your phone right now, how long do you spend scrolling or, you know, simply just aimlessly, mindlessly consuming content? It's a frightening number when you look at it. So why not use that time whilst on your step count to write an email, Get ahead at work, make arrangements, order the food shop, get organised. Or even if you're not going to do any of those things, all of that mindless screen time, you could do that whilst you're out on a walk. Not just sat, pondering and procrastinating, sitting on the sofa, watching Netflix and chill, staying stuck in life. If you want to get ahead, get yourself out, do those same things. Mindless doom scroll if you want to, if that's what, floats your boat. But get something out of it, get a reward for that, okay? So, when you look at it, we live in a world where we can do anything from our phones. So for me, I use that time to get ahead. I write emails, I write social media posts, I get back to clients, I do phone calls, I do check-ins, whichever way. And I'm getting something out of it. And, my team, my clients, whoever else, they're getting something out of it as well because I'm being productive. So see this as a time for you. You are so busy in your life. Everything's crazy. Everything's running at a stupid pace. You've got so many obligations, duties, and responsibilities. So I want you to see the time of you getting in your expenditure as a time for you. If you just need to use it as a time to reflect, to be at one with your own thoughts, or perhaps, listen to a podcast, or even watch some of our education content, as boring as that may be. You're going to learn something from that. You're going to gain clarity. You're going to create momentum. You're going to maybe unlock a new vision for yourself. Things become very, very clear when you're out in the fresh air, breathing in that fresh air, and, just kind of having that bilateral stimulation of your brain. See that as a positive thing. See that as a good time for you. Walking is amazing for the body, mind, and soul, so don't see it as a chore. Nobody's forcing you to do this. Nobody's holding a gun to your head. And I think sometimes you have to have reflection of that. This is going to move you towards your goal of what you want. And that time spent in doing expenditure is phenomenal for you, so don't see it as a chore. Okay, last on the list for the tips here whilst on preparation. One of the biggest distractions during your prep is your environment, from the places you go, the people that you see, to the very home that you live in. So here is some key tips to help in this area. Number one, and this relates to your home, rid the cupboards of the temptations. Home is where you spend most of your time outside of work and, the gym. So remove the cookie jar and you are far less likely to eat the cookies. Now, don't get me wrong. There are those of you that have little kids and this is hard. However, fill the cupboards with fruit, or unappealing kid snacks. Let's say like the beetroot melty sticks and all of those other freaking dreadful things. There are some awful Peppa Pig really cheesy Wotsits. They're absolutely disgraceful, but the kids go apeshit over them. Fill them with them and you're less likely to eat them, okay? Because if you have the chocolate bar wrapped in the fridge, if you have the Pringles with the lid off in the cupboard, the temptation is far greater. If it isn't there, if you're on a preparation to be your best self, your vision is so clear, you know exactly what you want. There's no world that exists in my mind where you're gonna leave the house, get in your car, drive to the shop, get out of your car, walk into the store, walk over to the aisle where all the crap is, pick that thing that you are wanting, that you are, tempted by, off of the shelf, stand in a queue, hand it over the till, pay the Apple Pay, get back in your car, drive home, get out the car, sit down and then eat that bar. Way too much resistance there. And not only that, you've had far too much time to think about it that you probably shouldn't be having this thing anyway. But if it's there in your face, it makes it very, very difficult. Now, this isn't always going to be possible. Not everybody is going to be on board with your mission. So there are, there's an extent of this where you do have to be stronger than your excuses and your vision has to be so strong that you merely see those things as something that is going to detract or sway you from doing what you need to do. And there are times where you're going to have to, practice restriction and avoid those temptations. But make your life as easy as possible. Make your life as easy as possible. Get rid of those things. Nobody needs them. It's not only going to benefit you, but it's going to benefit the house as well. Fruit. Get all the fruit in. It's going to be much better. Okay? Although I do appreciate the little terrors in the house. The little kiddies can be incredibly demanding. And this kind of brings me on to the next part with the kids. If you have kids, then you have to avoid eating their leftovers. Now, I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and this is incredibly hard. When you just sat there with, perhaps your mince and, your chicken or your steak or your fish, and as lovely as it might have been, that, that crust of pizza or those fish fingers that they've not eaten, those fries, those beans, whatever it is that you've put out for them, that looks very, very tempting, and it can be incredibly difficult when they've not eaten the food to see that go to waste. But really, we just have to put it in the freaking bin. You know, it's crappy food. Whether you're wasting it or not, who cares? The fact that you put it out for the kids, if they didn't want to eat it, then so be it. It goes in the freaking bin. You know, I understand. You know, perhaps you were brought up in a miner's town in Rotherham like I, and you don't like to see things go to waste. But put it in the freaking bin. Like, don't even consider it. Don't even think about it. Like, you're not going to pick the slices of pizza out of the bin. So just get it in the bin. Do it. Quick. Gone. Out of your way. Out of sight, out of mind. And then go ahead and eat what you need to eat. Now, next, when talking about environment on your preparation, you need to be cautious of who you spend time with. Let's be frank, we all have them. There are certain friends who lead us into temptation. You know, have a drink, live a little, don't be boring. We all know the ones, we all know who they are, and they can be fun from time to time, but they are more than likely the reason that you're stuck and not where you want to be. And in many ways, you have to be very, very cautious of the amount of time you are spending with those people. There's only so long you can swim against the tide before you're going to be inevitably washed back to shore with the rest, back to where you started. So you have to be very, very cautious. And I'm not saying that you have to cull these people from your life, but you have to be cautious because ultimately you typically are some of the people that you spend the most amount of time with. So it would be wise to spend less time with the people that are keeping you stuck and more time with people who understand you, who support you, who motivate you, who are perhaps even on the same mission as you. It's going to be much easier, they're going to relate, they're going to resonate, and you know, it's going to create that momentum that you're doing the right thing, that you're on the right path, and it creates that sense of buzz and excitement and community. So yeah, be cautious of who you spend time with. Okay, last one in this section on controlling your environment whilst on preparation. Don't find yourself in unfavourable environments. So here I'm talking about the pub, I'm talking about the bar, I'm talking about fast food restaurants, I'm perhaps even talking about going to the football. You know, if you are somebody who has a group of friends who go to the match on a Saturday, and they are the type of friends who have to drink 6 pints before you've even got to the game, if you're on a preparation like this, you're trying to get ahead, you're trying to accomplish something better for yourself, for your life, for your health, for your fitness, for your mindset. You can't be tempted, you can't be swayed. And it's very, very difficult, you know. And in many ways, you can often find yourself being a pain to the group. You know, the family wants to go to, I don't know, Frankie and Benny's or TGI Fridays or McDonald's for lunch. You need to be strong enough to be able to say no. It's the power of no. We're all people pleasers in many ways. That's often the case because, you know, you don't want to be that guy or that girl that's always being a pain or a problem. But when not being a pain and a problem is coming at the expense of you staying stuck, unhappy, unsatisfied, not where you want to be, you have to draw a line in the sand. You have to be strong enough to say no, stay true to your beliefs, you know, and just come up with a different alternative that's going to, you know, perhaps try and better suit people whilst also making sure that you're okay, that you're doing what you need to do. You know, it's the equivalent of being an alcoholic and, you know, saying, yeah, go sit in a bar and just have one drink. It's a bad idea. You ain't gonna have one drink. That's just ridiculous. You're gonna go cold turkey. You're never gonna get over it otherwise. So just be cautious of the environments that you put yourself in. Don't find yourself in places where you're gonna be tempted, swayed, persuaded, and just have this constant battle. The more of those battles you can avoid, the less resistance you are facing, the easier it is to stick to the plan in the long run. So yeah, be super cautious of the environments you find yourself in.